think the most addicting thing out there is just a W-2 job, paycheck. And I couldn't do it anymore. And walked away from everything. Cashed out my 401k.
Didn't have a plan yet.
I had an idea of getting into real estate because my father was in real estate. You got to be willing to take a risk, and you got to be willing to put value forward. Like, if you don't have money, if you can't pay somebody for that kind of knowledge, you got to go. I mean, you got to offer everything you got.
So I think that your experience is one that a lot of youth goes through, where you go to college, maybe you go partly to college, but either way, you get out and you're just like, what am I going to do? The idea is that when you're younger, you just keep doing different things until you find your passion. And one way to do that is to volunteer your time, your energy, your effort to help somebody out that's already successful doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that knowledge you gain and learning about it and developing a passion for it is immeasurable.
Yeah.
When do you think is the best time to buy?
In life, there's a blueprint for everything. There's no need to start over. Hear from industry leaders, those at the top of their fitness journey, and real estate gurus. They tell you exactly how they did it. All you have to do is listen, learn, and execute. This is The Blueprint with Brad Rice.
All right, here we go, guys. Another edition of The Blueprint. And today I got a special guest with us that drove out on his way north in California. He figured he'd stop by. He brought his little dog with him, cute little dog. My assistant's watching it. But today I've got Joseph Silva, the co-founder of CCG Real Estate Advisors. He's based in San Diego, not always been there, so we'll talk a little bit about that, how you ended up there. But he helps investors improve their real estate portfolios by evaluating their current holdings and then recommending some changes to it, maybe repositioning some assets through 1031 exchange and so forth, and building strategies that align with their long-term goals. So look, Joe is a guy with that leads with faith and integrity. You know, I haven't known him that long, but I'll tell you what, he just seems like such a genuine person with a passion for what he does and helping others. So, Joseph, thanks for joining me today.
Well, hopefully I live up to the intro. Well done. I love that.
Yeah, right on. So look, we were talking a little bit before the show about, just driving north, and you used to live in Camarillo.
I was in Camarillo.
Yeah, and so that's not very far from us here. And it's funny because, Micah, he's a little bit younger than you. What are you, like in your late 20s?
29, turning 30 this year.
Yeah, there you go, 29.
Nailed
so
it.
I have a son who's turning 29 in a couple of weeks.
Killer.
Yeah, is he 28 or 29? Shoot. Yeah, I guess he is. Is he turning 29? Born in 93. What the hell?
No, if he's born in 93.
He's turning 28.
I'm 95.
Yeah,
so
I'm turning
28.
28.
He's turning 28. Okay.
Yeah. God dang. I'm getting so old I don't even remember the age of my kids. So, but we were talking because Micah, he lives here in Simi Valley, and there's not a whole lot to do here for, a young, person who isn't building a family. But Camarillo is a little better than that. But let's talk about your journey for how you wound up in San Diego, because I lived in San Diego for a while, and honestly, I wish I would have stayed there after college.
It's a beautiful city.
Yeah. I went to San Diego State, and but that was in the 80s.
Okay. A little bit different.
Yeah, it was a little different, but I wish I would have stayed there. That's just a fun place. It's so diverse, so many things to do. The weather, everything about it just is so great. How long have you been down there?
I've been down in San Diego. I'm living in Point Loma. I've been there since January of 24, so year and a half.
Okay.
Pretty fresh. I don't think I saw a single day last year in Point Loma, specifically over 80.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah, it's
I don't think I saw a day under 60. It was
It's
place.
perfect.
I mean, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
I definitely pay for it.
So where did you come from?
So I'm actually from Tulare. Tulare,
okay.
Visalia. My father lives in Visalia. My mom in Tulare.
Like in farming? Are they in farming or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. My mother's was remarried into farming. My mom's ex-husband, I guess, because she's been divorced from him as well. He was in livestock. He owned an auctioneer company out there. So I was actually working with cows and small animals. He was auctioning them off. I was working out back and feeding them and moving them around from pin to pin.
How big was that property, or is it?
I don't remember what that was. That was probably 10 acres out there. We had our own auctioneer. auction yard, basically. People brought him large animals as well as small animals. We got some weird stuff as well, from like emus and buffaloes, and got chased by a couple of those.
Interesting.
Myself. Yeah.
So with the auctions of livestock, are these being auctioned off to butchers, or because I know when I grew up,
In-N-Out,
all that.
all of that.
Okay.
And I mean, I always knew which ones were going to McDonald's, and I always knew which ones were going In-N-Out, which was
okay.
weird. Whole nother story.
Okay.
We're not going
all
there.
right. Yeah, no, we got to go there.
Gross.
You know, you brought it up. All right. So
Oh man.
So you're growing up on the farm, and you guys are selling livestock, and you said you could identify which were being sold to McDonald's versus In-N-Out. How is that?
Oh, well, there's certain buyers, first off, for certain, I guess,
Quality?
For certain quality. And Quelo would have, I'm not going to say names, but there's specific buyers for specific type of guys. And some guys bought from multiple, like, buyers of this meat, right? So there'd be there would be, like, one guy, like this one guy would buy, I'm going to buy, this quality of meat for this dollar amount. I'm going to buy this quality meat for these type of buyers. So McDonald's would buy a certain type of meat. McDonald's would also kind of, they basically stuck with the low end, right? So it'd be like this. You knew whenever this cow got dropped off on this stockyard, we were just a place for which people would drop off cows.
To go through the auction.
And as long as the cow could walk through the ring, it could go to these locations.
Okay.
Right? And that would be the nastiest cows that would go always.
So like the cow that's super skinny and, or maybe
Intestines
it's just
hanging
got,
out.
like a big belly, whatever, but it could kind of stumble its way through.
As long as it could walk through. And we would have to like help some of them walk through the auction company. And some of them we couldn't even stop. It'd be just like open both sides of the auction. It's going to walk through. We know where it's going.
Yeah.
And then there would be better looking cattle, which would usually go to In-N-Out and other buyers, right?
Wow, that says a lot.
It was interesting.
The quality.
I reflect on it now, and I didn't think about anything back then. But
boy, it'd be good to have some footage of that.
Oh, there's plenty of footage of that kind of stuff out there.
We're gonna find some, and we're gonna
it's
use it as
gross.
B-roll.
It's gross. The more you know, the less you want to know, kind of deal. Right?
I hear you.
So, anyways, I grew up on farms. My uncle still is. He owns thousands of acres of nuts and pistachios, almonds.
So there's a big, so almonds were a big thing. And the reason I know is I've got a place out in Kern County too. It's a ski lake thing, but a lot of the crops have been turning to pistachios.
Oh yeah.
They were almonds.
Huge transition back in the day.
Yeah. But why pistachios now? Why is that so popular?
I don't know.
Is it just more profitable?
I mean, my uncle sends most of his pistachios to China.
Huh.
He exports most of his. We're not the large. I mean, we consume a lot of pistachios here in the States, but for whatever reason, there's certain areas in the world that buy a large amount of nuts, and most of it goes out of the States.
Huh.
But there was a huge demand for it, and like every other commodity out there, like different types of stone fruit, different type of fruits, different types of everything. Like from the farming world, it's difficult. Like this year, the navel orange is fantastic. And then everyone plants navel oranges in 5 years when they start producing. The market crashes because supply is through the roof. And then everyone that's losing money or just jumped into this market and isn't able to withstand that terrible time of oversupply has to jump to something else. And then everyone moves over to whatever's next. And it was pistachios. I don't know.
Got
7,
it.
8
How
years
much
ago.
do you know about farm subsidies?
Not much, to be honest.
I know that
much.
that's part of why the government subsidizes, farmers for different crops and so forth because of the incubation period, and then there may not be a market for it when they're done, and they wouldn't survive. And
they'll even pay you to fallow land now.
Yeah,
water is an issue.
Yeah.
My father actually he's a commercial broker or out in the Central Valley.
Oh, commercial real estate broker.
Real estate agent, broker out in the Central Valley. He helps people sell farms, identify like ever-changing water rights, right? He's the guy that people go to and like learn about what's changing, what's coming up there. He has to stay in tune with the water rights of California and how they're evolving because there's certain water districts that it costs more money to pump water. You don't get enough water. There's certain crops, and this crop with this kind of root system has to take this amount of water. He's like, if you're planted with this crop in this area, you're going to be losing money because you're going to have to pay people to truck money to water these crops to keep everything afloat.
Yeah.
And he's the guy that pretty much knows about this kind of stuff, and he knows like the type of crops that are out there and how much water they need. And the farmers come to him like, what are we going to do? And he helps them sell, move their money into other assets kind of around the Central Valley that have better water district rights or water rights in different water districts. And that's what he does. And pretty much I've seen him and kind of took note of what he's doing in real estate. In the last 7-8 years, he's kind of found his niche within real estate.
Yeah.
Prior to like the last 7 to 10 years, I would say he was just in residential real estate. And he did quite well on the Central Coast, and then moved to Central Valley. And it's back in 2008 to 2014, you're selling $80,000 houses, $20,000, like crazy stuff, right? And I remember as a kid walking into his office during the summer months and like sitting there and watching him have stacks and stacks and stacks of files, like 30 escrows going on with and just barely getting by. And he did all that and he got by and he did fantastic with it. However, he could barely get by. Now he's in commercial real estate and he's advising individuals with large portfolios of real estate.
Yeah.
Those being primarily in the agriculture realm and industrial as well. Helps them understand how their money's working for them, helps them understand what water rights are changing, and helps them move their money from either one water district into other areas or acquire more land in other water district, located properties. Or he helps them sell their farms outright and move them into triple net leases or tenant in common.
Sure. Look, that's some really valuable knowledge. And even, what you said about his knowledge of the water rights, I know... I've seen over the years, because I've had a place out there since the late 90s, and I've seen what's happened with the aquifers and how deep you've got to, do wells. And we used to have to redig every couple of years. Mm-hmm. But they're actually pretty plentiful now. And, we hear about these things with Trump and Newsom and all that about the water and the lack of water. And really, it's just the management of water, because the aquifers are pretty full. There's constantly water down there, but it's a matter of how it's used and where it's diverted. And the Central Valley's had a tough time, dating way back to when we had the largest mass of body of water there years and years and years ago, and then the Salton Sea, and then the diversion of water. And it's amazing what the changes that California has gone through. So I'm sure is it your father or your father-in-law?
My father.
Your father
Joe Silva.
is probably Joe Silva. Yeah. So
Easy
senior.
Yeah.
He's the OG.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he knows the whole story there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really interesting stuff. I remember growing up. You talk about having auctions. I remember my dad going to an auction. I was just a little tyke. I can barely remember this, but where he picked a cow with a couple buddies. And then they cut it up, and everybody took a portion, and got different meats, and we put it in the freezer in the garage, and had that for a year or two.
Oh, you can do that nowadays.
Yeah, you can still do that.
There's people doing that nowadays.
Yeah,
I love that grass-fed, grass-finished kind of cows, and you can buy a quarter of a cow, half a cow.
Right. And
they'll tell you what you're getting. That's the next way. That's how I think I'm gonna start buying my meat, because why not? You look like you're working out and you're eating pretty well. You probably go run through beef, right?
A lot. And you really don't know what you're getting, even though the labels say something. But, by the time it gets to your table, it's definitely not as good as it could be.
Not as good as it could be.
And if you go back in time and you look at the health of people over decades and decades, we were a lot healthier when there was a butcher shop on every corner.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And you weren't buying packaged things, and they weren't coloring meat and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
You just buy it from your local butcher shop, and you've got it, a couple of days after, what they do to them.
Yeah.
But cool. So look, you grew up out there.
Out there.
And then where'd you go to school?
So never really got pressed to go into college.
Okay.
My grandfather, before he passed away my sophomore year of high school. He was the only one that was like, hey, will you go to college if I leave some money aside for you? And he ends up getting cancer and passing before I graduate high school. But I remember him saying he's going to put some money around somewhere for me somewhere. And I'm like, all right, well, whatever. I remember my father at the time was still doing real estate, like residential real estate primarily, and still kind of barely getting by. He was just like, I'm looking for extra cash. So I was working for my uncle out in the farms. And my dad, whenever I was with him for that week, he'd be like, hey, I need you to go pass out flyers for me or do this. And I remember like, it was 110 degrees or something, midsummer, right? My father's like, hey, go pass out some more flyers. And I passed out like 150 flyers. I get sick of it. I come back to go print more, right? I'm like sitting there in the middle in like the AC, his office, AC'd office, 110 degrees outside. I'm all sunburned. I'm like, I'm going to apply for college. Nobody's pushing me to go to college. I'm going to apply for college. I remember he's like, hey, son, they're done printing. Like, get back out there. I'm like, I'm applying for college. He's like, what? I'm like, I'm applying for college, Pops. Just give me 5 minutes. Apply for Cuesta Community College in San Luis Obispo. Immediately get accepted. I mean, I submitted the application. I'm like, all right, well, let's see what happens. I think I walked another 100 houses, dropping off flyers, talking to people. Went back home and saw an email that I'm accepted. And whatever. Went to Cuesta Community College. Ended up out there in San Luis Obispo for 3.5 years. Did the 2-year to transfer thing with the intent of going to Cal Poly. Got some bad advice from my counselor. Come to find out, can't transfer mid-year. It was like I was like, at the point of which is like, I need to get the heck out of here. Like, Cuesta is not it. I know I want to finish out my education. People I'm hanging out with isn't it. You know, I want to move forward. I want to progress. I've gotten to the point at which had a couple, stumbling blocks hit me or a couple roadblocks, and I was just like, I'm either going to change my life right now, the trajectory of my life, or I'm going to continue to like do what I'm doing, messing around, having a good time. And anyways, mid-year transfer gave me like 3 options, one being full up north somewhere near Santa Cruz, and one being CSU Channel Islands. Had a buddy down here, worked out, just ended up coming down here to CSU Channel Islands for 2 years. So
that's how that happened. Got it.
So that's how I got here. And then I graduated in the fall of 2019. Yeah, so December 2019, supposed to walk in the spring. I gave myself 3 months after basically college to get out of what I was doing, which was banking. Okay. I was doing business banking at U.S. Bank, and I had done it throughout my college career. So I was always working full-time, supporting myself, paying the bills, paying for my own education. And then 3 months went by after that, and COVID took place. March of 2020, I blinked, and then next thing you know, it's 2022, and I'm still in the same place, still working for the same bank. And I'm like, what am I doing?
That period of time was, things were in suspense for sure.
Oh, it was crazy.
It was really tough to take action. I feel for you at that age and not being, effectively in the career you wanted to be in. Yeah. That was a tough time for sure.
I was doing fine as well. I was business banking. I was making okay cash. I was putting some aside. I was going on vacations here and there, traveled to Bali. I was having a good time. I got, 3-4 weeks of vacation a year, and I was just like, oh, this is what life is. And I just to a point, that was like breaking point, right? I think we all get there. I was just like, I'm over all this. Yeah. I don't want any of this. I think the most addicting thing out there is just a W-2 job, a paycheck. And I couldn't do it anymore. I started trying to do a job on the side, start my own business, and I couldn't go all in, so it wasn't successful. And it's just like, I'm over this. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's not going to be this. Put in like basically a 1-month notice. I was like, hey, I'm done after this month. Okay. And walked away from everything. Cashed out my 401k.
Didn't have a plan yet.
I pretty much, in the first, I had an idea of getting into real estate because my father was in real estate.
He was logical.
In ag real estate, but I didn't want to go back to Central Valley. Yeah. After you leave Tulare, you don't want to go back. Yeah. Right? I had a taste of the Central Coast, had the taste of Camarillo, little Thousand Oaks out here, LA. I'm like, there's a lot more to offer on the coastline than there is in the Central Valley. You're either part of the ag industry or you're not out in the Central Valley. So I was like, I'm going to get into real estate. I'm just going to do it on my own. I'm not going to do it with, my father. I could ride his cape tail. He was doing well at this point in ag, right? But I'm like, that's not the route I want to go because I don't want to live a life in the valley. So pretty much decided, I had some roots in San Luis Obispo. My grandfather was a developer before he passed, and he developed half of Spyglass Ridge in Shell Beach. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with that area.
Very familiar.
So as you're driving northbound up on the right-hand side, he was the first to break
ground. He's the ones that are on the right side that
Correct.
overlook the freeway and have a nice view.
Correct.
Got it.
There's this big white house up there he built for himself.
Got it.
He was the second one, put basically a shovel in the ground up there.
Okay.
Second to McClintock's.
Got it.
Anyways, I had roots. I had familiarity out there. It was like a second home my entire life, Central Coast. I'm like, that's where I'm going to start real estate. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. And I start interviewing basically brokers.
Okay.
I'm like, obviously
These are local brokers
local
or these
brokers
the
to
franchise
San Luis
chains?
Obispo. Correct. Yeah.
Which one?
like-
Like the locals or like the chains that are out there?
Both.
Okay.
I was doing
both
them
of
all.
them. Got
Yeah.
it.
And I basically interviewed all of them.
Okay.
I couldn't find anyone that interested me. It was all usually older folk that have been doing a business a certain way, had a referral business,
Yep.
and that's how they
Especially
kept them
out there.
afloat. Yeah, they all have teams underneath them, and their teams do a little bit something different here and there. And I couldn't necessarily, nothing piqued my interest. I'm running out of time. I'm pretty much down to the last week of my job, and I'm like, I'm moving up here. I don't have a place to rent. I don't have anything lined up, but I know I'm going to get into real estate. I just haven't determined what broker it's going to be. And I happened to find this kid that I used to work with, or he basically kind of lived with me in San Luis Obispo for a week or two. I saw he was doing well in real estate, kind of looked into what he was doing, asked him for a referral to talk to his team leader basically, and he didn't really give me the warm welcome I was hoping for, so I went around him and went straight to the team leader and was like, hey, I see you're doing things different. You're my age. He's same age as I am, born in 95. I was like, you seem to be doing well. Would love to pick your brain. I'm going to jump into real estate. Would love to opportunity to join the team. He's like, I'm not looking to add to my team, but be happy to have a conversation with you. I said, that's all I'm asking for.
Yeah.
And I happened to be in San Luis Obispo whenever I find his number. He's like, when can you get here? And I said, well, I'm driving back from Paso Robles. I can be there in 15. He says, stop by the office. Here's the address. So I walk in, see my friend from back in the day, and he's like, what are you doing here? And I said, I asked for an intro, but I finally got a hold of him, and yeah, I'm going to talk to this kid. And basically went in there, had a conversation with him, and he was like, hey man, I started asking conversations how'd you get into it? What are you doing? What kind of production? What level of success? How long have you been doing this for? What are you doing? What are your what's the algorithm? What's the equation for your success? He's made 6 figures the year before. And at that time I was 26. I'm high 6 figures though.
Right.
He's that year he's possibly going to break into 7-figure range.
Gotcha.
As a 27-year-old. I'm you're doing something different. I just don't understand. Is this legal? How? Give me the, he's like, oh, all right, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm doing it. And
so what was he doing?
This is where he basically had a 12-line dialer. He's on the phones.
Okay.
He's not waiting for business to come to him. He's going out and he's finding the business.
Yep.
And I'm like, all right, well, that makes perfect sense. Nobody else has told me anything like this. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, you can go door knocking. That's 101. I'm calling 12 people at a time, and somebody's answering. When they pick up, I'm talking. And I'm talking to somebody every 30 seconds. I don't wait. He's like, I will be on the phone.
And that works. I know agents that do that.
It works.
And all they time block. Yeah. And they do 3 hours a day, and there's just outbound calls. And that's it. And doing big numbers, but they don't care about the no's. They just keep working their way to the yeses.
This guy did it for 3 years.
Yep.
Wasn't always doing that, but he found.
So did you jump in to do the same thing?
Basically, so the story goes, I was talking to him. I was like, "This is brilliant, man. How do I get on this team? How do I get onto your platform, your CRM? How do I figure? Let me in." He's like, "No, I'm not expanding the team." I said, "What I got to do to get on the team is I'm not letting you on the team. I'm sorry. The team's full." I'm like, all right, well, what would it look like if I were to be on the team? He's like, well, you'd be calling 8 hours a day. You'd have 3 open houses every single weekend. You have to take 1 day off because you have to have that. And he had something else. But anyways, I was like, all right, cool. Is that it? He sat back and he was just looked at me and he just starts laughing. He's like, are you serious? I said, yeah. He's like, all right. Be here on Monday.
Okay, cool.
So I show up on Monday.
You had the tenacity to keep pushing on it.
He was like, we'll see how it goes. He's like, you're not getting, he said, you're not getting paid. He's like, you're working 8 hours a day. You're calling on the dialer and you're doing 3 open houses for the team and X, Y, and Z, and you're not getting paid. And I said, all right, cool. Is that it? And he let me in. Long story short, closed, I think, 3 deals in 3 months.
That's phenomenal.
Which was great for somebody just starting off, right?
Absolutely.
Your first year in real estate, it's I think the number's you closed 2 deals in the first year or something stupid. Did that in 3 months, closed 3 deals in 3 months, and then that next year. Anyways, it was a great launching pad, basically.
Yeah, well, what I find is really interesting about that is that we talk about this all the time, and I'm sure you've heard it, but if you really want to get into some line of work, if that's your passion, you go, I want to get into real estate, or you see something that you really like, it's entertainment, it's management, it's whatever.
Yeah.
Find somebody who's really successful at it and volunteer your time.
That's it.
Don't expect anything in return.
Nothing.
Because your payment is the knowledge you're gaining. And you're young enough to do that. So I think that your experience is one that a lot of youth goes through, where you go to college, maybe you go partly to college, maybe you go the whole time, but either way you get out and you're just like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I think that's very common. And the idea is that when you're younger, you just keep doing different things until you find your passion. And one way to do that is to volunteer your time, your energy, your effort to help somebody out that's already successful doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that knowledge you gain and learning about it and developing a passion for it is immeasurable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like that's what you did. So you did this. So you did this. You were doing the calling for that period of time you were there. And then how did you wind up transitioning from that to now your advisory services?
So did that for 4 months, 5 months on that team. Just ripping. Just hardcore calling, dialing, closing deals, residential deals that wasn't from me. I was still involved in learning as
Right.
Basically just drinking water from the fire hose kind of deal.
You were getting people that said, yeah, I might be interested in selling my house.
Yeah.
Right? You just needed the maybe.
Yeah.
And then you turned it over to one of the licensed agents.
I set the meeting.
You set the meeting,
got us in
and then you were a
person.
fly on the wall.
I was part of the process,
Yep.
saw how I got from A to Z,
Yep.
and it was
That's a great way to
Beautiful.
learn.
fastest way to learn.
Yep.
I gave majority of my commission up, but it was in exchange for the knowledge, which is invaluable. You can't put a price
That's
tag
right.
on that.
That's right.
3 years of knowledge acquired in 3 months, I'll make that trade all day long.
That's right.
And the thing is, like, kind of going back to what you were saying, you got to be willing to take a risk, and you got to be willing to put value forward. Like, just you have to bring something to the table in exchange for that kind of value. If you don't have money, if you can't pay somebody for that kind of knowledge, you got to go. I mean, you got to offer everything you got.
That's right. Go all in on it.
I basically went in to real estate with 3 months of income, like 3 months of
reserves?
get me by kind of
Okay.
money. That's it. Like, I only had 3 months to figure
So you were
it out.
all in.
I was all in.
Yeah.
My father was nervous. He didn't tell me at the time, but talked to him after I got my first deals closed. I was like, "Hey, Pops, like, I'm still afloat. Like, I might have one more month, but I'm still afloat."
Yeah.
He was like, "I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous." I wasn't though, because it was my mindset was, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I know I won't let myself fail.
That's right.
I will not let myself.
So how long were you there for?
I was only with that team for about 5 months before things kind of went sideways with the team as a whole.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I had to walk away from it and start kind of another team with a couple individuals that were a part of that team.
Okay.
We started kind of CCG, but it was like more or less the same thing of what we were doing with
Okay.
that team. It was just residential. But I would say within about 6 months of us being exactly what we were before, but without the team lead in that on that team, and what came with that, we pretty much got burnt out. We were seeing the success. It was no doubt of it.
So a
Like,
couple
we were
of
doing
people
fine.
that you broke off with
Yeah.
are now your partners with CCG?
Yeah, one of them is right now.
Okay.
A couple of us walked away and started like CCG, the first version of it, iteration of it, and it was more or less a residential team underneath Keller Williams.
Okay, so you're selling real estate.
Selling
And your
real estate.
Keller Williams team.
It was a team, a name, a
Yep,
label,
of
an
course.
umbrella. No, a name or a team underneath an umbrella, which
Yeah,
was Keller
understood.
Williams. So we stuck together. We shared the CRMs. We coached each other. We started growing the team. We started
Still
bringing people
up
in.
north.
Still up north in San Luis Obispo. And pretty quickly, my current business partner and I were like a little burnt out because we were burning and turning. We were just same thing one day after another. And it was just like, you know what? Like, I enjoy this. The money's pretty good. Like, it's actually better than I've ever experienced in my life. I was like, but I'm getting burnt out. Like, this isn't it. Like, this isn't fulfilling. Not burnt out per se on making the money, just not fulfilled.
Right?
And we're like, well, what do we enjoy about what we do? And we talked about it for a while, went back and forth, and then we're like, well, that's okay, but like, let's talk about like who we bring the most value to. Like, let's solve for that. Who is it that we have enjoyed working with the most? Which ones of our clients? And what we found was it was the investor, and we were like, well, why is that? Basically kind of just broke it down, and what we uncovered was my financial backing, as well as my business partner Armand Bonitaba, his financial backing. He was in he was in the financial services, selling investment products.
Okay.
With Fisher Investments. I'm not too sure if you ever heard
Yeah,
of them.
I've heard of them.
So he was cold calling for them. Basically,
Okay.
It was like lining up meetings for.
So you kind of reverse engineered who your ideal client would be.
What we did was we identified it was that the investors were our ideal client because we had the most value to offer them.
Okay.
With my father's backing, my father as a real estate advisor for basically ag investors.
That's right. Yep.
He has a backing or a background of residential real estate. His parents owned a brokerage of 50 agents.
Okay.
And they sold that off to Compass, and they're still in real estate today, and they've done quite well for themselves, own a whole bunch of real estate, and they've done quite well. So he's been a part of real estate his entire life. He's been doing it for 7 years himself, but, I mean, myself, real estate's second nature.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I grew up in the back seat of a Suburban, going from house to house, seeing just different property my entire life. Hearing my father on the way to school talking about real estate, like it's just.
Was your family invested in Silicon Valley real estate too?
Not my family per se, but Armand's family owns several assets up in Silicon Valley.
Okay,
yeah. We're in the Bay Area.
Got it. So then, did you basically hone in on doing real estate for investors? Like that was your specialty?
Yeah. So,
but how did you get from that to kind of this advisory services about portfolios? Are you a tech investor looking to shape the future of real estate? HomePie is the #1 for sale by owner marketplace, and we are revolutionizing the way homes are bought and sold. I'd love to hear from you. Just email invest@homepie.com and let's chat. Now back to the show.
So he went from Fisher Investments into Marcus & Millichap. So he was working for Marcus & Millichap, working in the commercial space. He still felt like he was on a W-2. He wasn't, but he pretty much was. It wasn't the freedom he was looking for in real estate. Whenever he got into, he left the W-2 job, Fisher Investments, to get into real estate to be, self-employed. He didn't feel self-employed with Marcus & Millichap. They do a great training program. A lot of great things came of it. He learned a lot, very knowledgeable, great connections came of it, but he didn't really enjoy the lack of freedom that it offered that he hoped it would. And then he jumped into basically a fund. He was a part of large acquisitions. He had a $100 million fund. He was a team. It was a team of 5, and they were like on an acquisitions team looking for, 20.
So his
to $50
skills
million
really complemented yours. You guys come from a different area.
They did.
But how? So how does CCG differ from like a traditional brokerage?
So here's what he saw, is he got to see, because he had a $100 million fund that they were a part of the acquisitions for across Sunbelt states, he got to see what it looked like to be a part of a team of institutional advisors.
Sure.
At institutional level, with that kind of money, there's institutional advisors, people delegating, in charge of moving people's money around, underwriting opportunities, showing them, basically moving people's money around for them.
Yep.
They're wealth advisors, but in real estate. He got to see what that looked like for institutional investors. We got into residential real estate together because he got sick of that as well. Because he wasn't necessarily entrepreneur. He was back into a W-2 job. He got into residential real estate, and we pretty much complemented each other. And his background, my background, we aligned. We were like, we enjoy working with investors, and the reason is because we have the most value to offer them.
Sure.
The conversations are different. It's not emotionally tied as numbers. The numbers make sense. Make the purchase.
Right.
Like if we can make it make sense for both clients, seller and buyer, let's make it happen. Anyways, we've kind of honed in on this niche, which is bringing the institutional level advisory to the sub-institutional investor, the individual, the mom and pop investor that owns 1 to 50 assets.
Okay.
Maybe their latter half of their investing career, they've, majority of their life have bought a house, lived in it, moved out of that house, leveraged that house to buy their next house, rented out the last house, and continue that cycle until they have 10, 15 houses, bought a couple other multifamily assets perhaps, and they get to the end of their life and they're managing 15 to 25 assets on their own. And it's pretty hands-on because they're still doing it the way they've always done it,
Yep.
which is on their own. And everything's underperforming. It's all owned outright because they've owned them for 30 plus years.
Sure.
They're fully depreciated. We're doing fantastic. And we're like, well, you're doing fantastic and you've done fantastic up until this point. However, beautiful thing about what you're doing is, you're investing in real estate. There's some great benefits that come with real estate investing that you're missing out on. Depreciation being one of them, leverage being another significant one. Your return on equity because of these lower rents and the amount of appreciation that we've seen since COVID. It's just, you're not doing as well as you could be.
Yeah.
You're leaving money on the table. If I could show you what it would look like for your money to be working for you the way it should be, would you be open to hearing about it? And if it made sense, would you be open to exploring what that looked like and working with us?
So you bring in a new client and you have them basically lay their portfolio out for you, and then you analyze it and you see where there might be some opportunity that they're not taking advantage of, whether it's equity that could be leveraged to go acquire other property, or maybe it's an asset that really doesn't have that much in appreciation left in it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's time to transition out of that into something else. Talking about 1031 exchanges, which I want to touch on, but basically an entire you look at their entire portfolio and you're an advisory service for them.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's value driven on the forefront. We're simply we're not charging anyone an advisory fee or a portfolio analysis fee, at least not as of now, because we're still early on and we're trying to acquire business, right?
But this
it's all about bringing value first.
this leads to the possibility of maybe representing them on a sale or
It does.
finding an asset for them to purchase and leading them into that asset, or maybe even driving them to leverage a property, get some financing, and then take that equity and roll it over into something else. Let's talk about the
That's
1031
exactly it.
exchange. So for the audience, what is a 1031 exchange?
I'd say if you're considering joining the AmeriFund team, it's a really good idea.
We as processors at AmeriFund Home Loans support the loan officers in every aspect of the loan once it comes into processing, because we want them out there marketing themselves and originating more loans and supporting more borrowers.
Competitive commission plans are a given, and powerful technology is expected, but what truly sets us apart is our culture. We've built a solid support system for our loan officers.
If you're interested in joining the AmeriFund team, go to amerifund.com/careers.
So a 1031 exchange is a vehicle that the IRS has allotted investors in real estate to basically utilize. It's a loophole within the IRS code to avoid you having to pay any capital gains. So a 1031 exchange is you basically sell an asset that you've owned for however many years, at least 2 years. Let's tell an example, because I think that's the best way to paint the picture. Somebody bought a property 100 years ago, 30 years ago for $100,000. Okay, let's say that property is now worth $1 million. They sold that property today. They would have about $900,000 of appreciation in that property since they purchased the property, which would be identified as a capital gains. You can be taxed for capital gains on that appreciation of $900,000, which is a significant amount of money. That's right. The beautiful thing about real estate versus equities, if that happens in equities, you sell an equity, you sell a stock, you're going to pay capital gains tax on that. It'll be a different type of tax, but you'll be paying a tax for it. In real estate, you don't have to. You can, and you can choose to, and there's ways to avoid it if you don't want to do a 1031 exchange, and we can talk about that as well using creative financing such as seller financing. However, if you want to keep the money that's working, that you've accrued in appreciation in that property, if you want to continue to use that money and you don't want to give that to Uncle Sam, you can use a vehicle called a 1031 exchange. You sell that property for $1 million, which you bought for $100,000. You sell it for $1 million, and then you can buy another property for $1,001 or more, and not have to pay any capital gains at all.
You're rolling over the tax liability into the next property.
You are.
Yeah.
Correct.
So in a 1031 exchange, you're taking the taxable equity, because there could be equity in there that's not taxable, and they may want to pocket that, which is fine. So you have a certain amount of let's say cash you're able to pull out without paying tax on it. Usually it's limited. but the balance of it, you'd roll into a 1031 exchange account. You got to do it through a licensed 1031 agency, and that money sits there, and you have, 6 months to identify a property?
You actually have only 45 days to identify.
45 to identify and 6 months to close?
Correct.
Okay. You can get extensions on that. There's
loopholes. What we do to extend that identification period is, well, one, we talk through the idea of what it would look like to sell and what the ideal up leg would look like for the individual. Okay, you want to go from a single family asset of $1 million into a multifamily asset worth $1.1 million, $1.2 million. What would that look like? Okay, where would that be? What geographical areas would you want to keep it in California or in San Diego County? Or do you want to move it up to LA, or do you want to move it to San Luis Obispo or the Bay Area? Or would you like to move it out of state? What would that look like? Here's the return difference. We kind of show them, here's the equity you have. Here's the equity you'd be looking at if you sold, because there's a lot of fees that come with selling real estate.
Yep.
And then here's what it would look like if it were in one of those vehicles. We help them see what that equity does and what the return would be on a different, vehicle that they're looking at, like multifamily. Anyways, it's
and then they have that money though
that
they have in that account then gets used as the cash position in the new property.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I guess what I was trying to say, and I got lost there, I apologize, but it was to extend that 45-day identification period, which is a very tight time frame. That starts at the close of escrow of the sale of the downleg the property. What we do is we actually identify what that property is going to look like prior to even taking the property to market. We have a team that's currently out, as we speak, is out cold calling for specific clients that are active of ours, that are about to come into a 1031 exchange time frame like that, or are in one, and they're looking for that property prior to us even taking the property to market.
You're incubating properties for them to possibly identify.
That's basically what we're doing. We're trying to create a certain level, create a higher level of certainty that their exchanges can be successful. We haven't had any fail. Don't plan on allowing that to happen. It's pretty difficult to do so, but you can have better 1031 exchanges. In my opinion, the best opportunities are off market, and us finding an opportunity off market, not waiting for one to come to market, being proactive versus being reactive is the best way to serve our clients.
How are you identifying off market properties?
Cold calls. The same way it started. Cold calling 12 people at a time and
getting a hold of owners through reverse
prospecting. We purchase. I mean, if you own property, the truth is your information's out there. We pull data for individuals that own one or more assets that have a misalignment from the physical address to the mailing address, meaning that their address of the property that I'm looking to purchase the information from have a different mailing address, which means tax address, which means a home, than the property that I'm pulling the information from. So it's an absentee owner or investor. And I can pull it for a specific type of asset classes, 2+ units.
And are you typically, when you're doing that, when you're bird dogging like that, are you looking for properties that are currently owned in the name of individuals so they're less sophisticated? Because like every asset I have is in an LLC.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that own rental properties or even commercial property and it's still in their name.
Yeah.
So is that something that you identify? And
not necessarily. It's something to be cognizant of. But I mean, honestly, sophisticated or not, if the money makes sense, I mean, honestly, sophisticated is the better, right? If the money makes sense, if I'm going to bring you a logical offer that makes sense for you as well as for my buyer because they're in 1031 exchange.
Right. So you're making calls. You're saying, "Hey, would you be interested in selling your property? I have a buyer that is looking for an asset like yours."
Precisely.
And you get somebody. You're doing that primarily with off-market properties.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's who we're calling.
Got it.
Only people worth calling.
Yep. Understood.
In my opinion.
Okay.
I mean, I can call expired listings, but how many times? I mean, I don't know if you ever try to sell something, you pulled it off the market. How many calls you get after you take that property off the market?
Yeah.
Because people are
exhausted.
exhausted.
Inundated. Yeah.
They are exhausted from phone calls.
That's right.
They're just rude at that. At a certain point, they become rude. They don't want to be, they have to be.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of agents out there looking for low-hanging fruit. And honestly, if you were on the market at one point and you're not on the market anymore because you weren't successful with the sale, then there's a chance that when you're still interested in selling.
I imagine when you do find these properties and your buyer now identifies that that's a property, that gives you an opportunity for another client.
Always
too,
does.
That seller.
In small business or big business, always leads to more business.
Yeah.
Yeah, this beautiful thing about what we do is, more often than not, we're double ending transactions, especially when they're off market.
Yeah, for
That's how we
sure,
get
because
paid.
they're not already with another agent.
Yeah, and with
So
that
that
being
makes
said,
sense.
we're paying for a team. Like, whenever our clients work with us, they're not just getting Joseph Silva. They're not just getting Armand Banitaba. They're getting our whole team
Yeah.
to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks.
So
Whenever
did
you're
you
a
move
real
your
estate
whole
agent-
team to San Diego?
I did.
Do you have an
And-
office down there, or you work from your homes? Or
Work from home.
Okay,
Our clients are investors. I meet them at their properties
sure.
that we're looking at selling, or we'll meet them at their house.
Good.
It's all about
Efficient.
the relationship.
Yeah, that's super efficient.
Yeah. At some point, we'll have a big enough team for which it would make sense to have a location, because the way we're structuring our business is a little bit different. We have AEs, or account executives, basically individuals that are cold calling. These cold callers are going to be specialized in cold calling, getting in contact with investors out there,
Sure.
learning how to communicate with them over the phone, being on top of those kind of that first
And that's a great
impression
way for them to,
communication.
they're doing the same thing you did,
And
right?
they're basically
learning.
teeing up the opportunity to the OSP, or the outside salesperson, the Joseph Silva for now, or the Armand Banitaba, who's able to bring the real value to the table. They tell about our value. They communicate our
course.
value. They get them in the door. They're
This is
setting up
exactly what you did when you broke in.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're setting up 3 appointments for us a day. They're
That's a lot.
crushing
That's a
day,
lot.
at least each.
So let me ask you this. So obviously, we've seen, what was a boom in real estate in the early 2020s. 2020, 2021, interest rates are super low. Properties are flying off the shelf, multiple offers, single day, escrows, over ask price, to where we have been for the last 3 years, or just over 3 years now, with higher interest rates, a lot less inventory, buyers sitting on the shelf waiting. When do you think is the best time to buy?
My advice for someone selling their home: number 1, do it yourself and save. Number 2, use HomePie.
HomePie makes it easy to buy or sell without an agent. I can list a home in minutes and start receiving offers right away from buyers.
When we discovered that we didn't have to lose $40,000 in agent commission just to upsize to a larger home, it was an obvious choice.
List your home for free at homepie.com. Keep your piece of the pie.
When do you think is the best time to buy?
Nobody's got the crystal ball, I think no matter buyer's market or seller market, there's always an opportunity. It's whether or not you're creative enough to see it, or you have the team working for you that's able to find it.
Yeah.
And whether or not you have the balls to take the risk for it. Sometimes I think there are certain markets it's easier, for sure, and that's whenever the market becomes saturated. And honestly, that's when the deals kind of become fewer and fewer, especially on market. Interest rates right now are high, but so are cap rates. I mean, they're slow to correct. Cap rates are lagging indicators of where the market's at. Cap rates, we're starting to see like five caps all over San Diego, which is, kind of high for San Diego.
Yeah.
But interest rates are 6.5 to 7.5, so it's one
We're
of those
talking
things.
commercial, everybody.
Yeah.
Don't
Sorry.
think that's residential, but
Yeah.
look, I heard you say this thing, and I think it's important for you to repeat it and probably make this part of what you say all the time. But you said it's not timing the market; it's time in the market, right?
Absolutely.
So that kind of goes hand in hand with what I always say, which is, look, the best time to buy was yesterday, but the second best time to buy is today. And the reason for that, Mike and I just went over a 75-year chart of real estate. And in the last 75 years, this is since 1950, guess how many years real estate was a down market?
In 75 years?
Mm-hmm.
15?
7. 1990, 1991, and 2007 to 2011. That's it. Every other year has been an up market. So I love it when people get advice from family, friends. They're all good intentions, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. Hey, no, wait till interest rates come down. No, property's going to crash. Nah, it's about the amount of time you're in the market.
Yeah.
And so the sooner you buy, the sooner you can start on the road to that appreciation. And people don't know that. But when they see it in black and white, then they become a little bit more interested in that concept.
Yeah.
So regardless of where rates are at, you can always refinance your property. You can always get a lower interest rate when rates drop. But you can't always be in a market where there's not as much competition, and that's what we have today.
Yeah.
There's not as many buyers as there are sellers, and there's not that many sellers either. But
And it's a weird time.
It is.
I do need to say that more often. It's not about timing the market. It's about timing the market.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard you say that, and I wanted to chime in on that. But yeah, look, man, you've done a lot in a short period of time. So it sounds like you are taking the right steps. You took the right steps to learn about a new business. You found your niche. You've got your passion, and now you're really helping people. You're helping people to improve their portfolios, to improve their lives, and that brings rewards. It brings rewards, to you, intrinsically, but also to your customers and to you monetarily. So, kudos to you, man. You've done a great job. Where do you go from here? What's your next steps?
Expanding the team. So there's the wealth generation side of it, which is why I'm fired up about real estate. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is why I'm working with investors, because I've seen it where real estate is like one of the best vehicles to like create generational wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, my grandfather did a great job in developing. I want to get in that at some point for myself. I see there being a vision where in San Diego, which it being a little bit higher on the growth curve of any city, so to say, not as high as Los Angeles or the Bay Area, but San Diego's growing quick
for sure.
Taking some things that I'm learning down in San Diego and bringing that to the Central Coast, San Luis Obispo, and bringing real value to a market that's never seen anything like that. Now, being in the development space, I think I'll be there at some point. Until then, I'm going to be expanding the team. My idea right now is with the guys that are a part of my team that are cold calling for us, empower them, equip them with the tools that they need to do what I do.
Yep.
Give them the skill set, the knowledge that I'm acquiring, allow them to do what I'm doing, and me just sit back and just foster the relationships that they're creating. And only focus on the higher deals, the larger deals.
That's a good
plan.
plan.
The deals that I want to do, and then get them AEs or cold callers themselves and just expand the team that way. Right now, we're in a couple different markets. We're in San Diego. We're doing a couple of deals in Orange County. We have a development deal up in the Bay Area right now. I'm actually driving up to San Luis Obispo because I got some vines I'm taking to market, or I just took to market in Paso Robles. We still do a lot of business up there.
How'd you get that business? That's cold calling too?
Cold calling, yeah.
So this is a vineyard?
A vineyard, correct.
And you were just calling vineyards?
I have a lot of clients that I've called up there that I have relationships with. I'll forever keep a footprint in the Central Coast.
Is this vineyard, is it just the business of selling grapes?
No, this is a smaller
They have
one.
a residential property on the property, a residential
small
home
residential mobile home on a property, basically just for a keeper of the vines. It's only 10 acres.
Oh, okay.
I got a couple of clients, one with I think 170 acres, and another one with I think 160 acres, but with only 25 acres planted. Massive operations, big names in like Willow Creek area.
Yep.
I don't know if you're familiar with that. And then I got some farmers down in Napomo, Rio Grande, some blueberry farmers.
Okay.
Which we're going to be taking to market. Working with my father, because agriculture is his niche, right? So we get an opportunity to work with him, bring him and his specialties to the team. So yeah, we do some of that as well. I enjoy it, but I guess kind of going back, where am I going is I want to continue to grow this team. My idea is to add value to my clients, add value to the guys on my team, allow them to live the life that I get to live. And I've lived a pretty blessed life the last couple of years. Like my life's changed. It's been turned upside down. Luckily, I have my father to lean on. I got Armand's parents to lean on. I got Armand to lean on. I'm pretty blessed where I'm at. I've access. I might not know everything, but I have people that know what I don't know. And I have the humility to be able to ask people for help, which allows me to continue to add value to people around me. So my goal is to be those people, be that guy for these guys on my team, and for the guys that I'm going to bring in underneath them as well.
Well, I think it's great that you saw the blueprint that you wanted to emulate. You went in, you donated your time to learn, and then you wound up building the same thing. And now you're creating a scenario where others can do the same under you. So that's great.
It's not about creating your own wheel. It's about recreating someone else's.
Yeah. Why start from the beginning?
There's a blueprint for everything.
There is, my man.
Just figure out which one you want to take on.
There is. Well, awesome. Joseph, if somebody has an interest in working with you, if they just want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach you?
Inquire through our website, ccgrea.com. Stands for Coastal California Group Real Estate Advisors. You can find us on Instagram, ccg.rea, or follow me on Instagram, which is Life of J Silva. But either way, find a way to reach out to us. We're all over the place. More than happy to help anybody.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great website. Six letters. That's great. All right. Very good. Guys, that wraps up another edition of The Blueprint. If you liked what we had to bring you here, if you learned something, please share it with others. Like, subscribe, follow, do all those things. It really helps the channel. And we will see you again the next time on The Blueprint.